They were failed by the police. Families who lost sons and brothers. Today, the inquests into their deaths said mistakes, missed opportunities and basic errors by detectives let a serial killer get away with murder.
If they'd have just listened to any of us and investigated properly, then, as I said, none of these would be sat here because they'd have done the job.
They were discriminated against from the very beginning, whether that had been, they were just seen as a druggie, homeless, gay. It's not acceptable.
Police did get him in the end.
Stephen, did you have any involvement in his death?
I did not know, no.
Did you kill Jack Taylor?
Did not know.
But they knew about Stephen Port from the beginning.
Emergency ambulance. What's the address of the emergency?
Cook Street. There's a young boy who got his caps outside.
After his first murder, he made the first 999 call.
Do you know if he was breathing?
No, I don't know.
Did you see anything happen at all?
No.
The chef from Barking lied from the start. Meeting his victims online, he'd take them to his flat. Once inside, he'd spike their drinks with lethal doses of the date-rape drug GHB. His first victim, Anthony Walgate, a fashion student from Hull.
He was loud, funny. When he went down to London, he loved it. He loved everything about it, and he was determined to be a success.
Anthony was the first of 4 young men Port killed in Barking. He dumped the 23-year-old right outside his flat and told police the student had died of an overdose.
The initial response was appalling. He was found on the 19th of June, and by the end of June, they'd closed the case. They just didn't do it. They didn't do any checks on Stephen Port. They did it on Anthony, who was the victim. I've said this all the way through. If he hasn't been stabbed, he hasn't been shot, he hasn't been beaten up, why is it not suspicious?
Anthony's student friends, along with his family, pleaded with police to investigate the death further. But detectives in Barking insisted there was nothing suspicious.
And I'd said then, 7.5 years ago, I'm telling you now, he was murdered. And it came out that he was.
At the inquests, it emerged police failed to do basic forensic and digital checks on Port. His laptop, which held vital clues, was not examined by detectives.
And he literally, at that time, got away with murder. If they could have been bothered to do it, they would have saved 3 more boys. Young lads who had everything to live for.
2 months after Anthony was found, another body was discovered dumped in the graveyard of St Margaret's Church, just 400 metres from Port's flat. It was Gabriel Kovari, a 22-year-old art student from Slovakia. And just 3 weeks later, Daniel Whitworth was murdered, left in the same place. He was 21. In a morbid twist, both men were found by the same person who was walking her dogs through the graveyard.
I've come through and I've seen somebody else, a different boy, sitting in exactly the same position, leaning up against the exact same wall. And I'm thinking to myself, please God, no, please not another one.
Slumped against the wall, the second body Barbara Denham found was Daniel Whitworth. Port had planted a fake suicide note on him. But police took it at face value and failed to see it was murder.
Their performance was incompetent. There aren't words good enough for it, but they were incompetent over and over and over again. They're just indifferent to what's right in front of their eyes. And that's been their attitude all the way through this.
They're totally to blame here. They messed up enormously at the beginning.
Port then did serve a short time in prison, just a few months for the minor charge of perverting the course of justice. But he was actually a serial murderer, and once released, he killed again. This is CCTV footage of Port meeting Jack Taylor in Barking. It's now September 2015, and hours after this was taken, the 25-year-old was murdered.
We didn't just lose our brother, we lost our best friend. He was our baby brother, but in our lives, we've both said the same. He was our older brother because he looked out for us in every way.
Like the 2 killings before, Jack's body was again dumped in the nearby graveyard by Port. And once again, police failed to link the murders. But Jack's sisters knew something wasn't right, so they became the detectives searching for their brother's killer.
We felt like nothing was being done, so we knew we had to take over and start investigating ourselves. But we knew we had to do the right thing. The right thing was to make sure that we found out what had happened to Jack and to make sure this never happens again.
The inquest heard how Jack's sisters cracked the case. In the weeks after their brother's death, they searched the internet up to 30 times a day, producing a case file. They made 33 pages of notes. In them, they managed to link all the deaths, which so far detectives had failed to do.
They didn't do what they were supposed to do. They've let down the public. They've not just let down the boys and let down us as families. They've let down the public that they're supposed to protect.
We do also understand that Stephen Paul took his life, but we do also feel like the police do have blood on their hands, because they might as well have just loaded a gun and handed it to him.
The Metropolitan Police has apologised to the victims' families for the failings in this case, but they deny homophobia was to blame.
I don't think the Met is institutionally homophobic, and I don't think that my colleagues are homophobic as well. I don't think that that has been an issue. What absolutely has been is the errors that the officers at the time made.
I've said all along, and I will always say it, it was homophobia. If that had been a young girl who was 23, dumped outside near the bins, there would have been a lot more investigating.
If that was a woman, Stephen Paul would have been looked into.
See, this is Jack Taylor.
To date, no police officer has been disciplined over Port. Some have in fact been promoted.
Why should these people continue in their role? If they wasn't good enough in 2014 and they wasn't good enough in 2015, what makes them good enough now? It's disgusting.
But no inquests will bring Jack back.
Whilst Jack loved everything, every day of the year, Christmas was his big thing. The Christmas before he died, he asked us all to wear Christmas jumpers, and we all said we would, but when we all turned up, we didn't. So we never got to spend another Christmas with him. So what we've done ever since then is we all dress up at Christmas, every single one of us, in memory of him.